Okay. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, you are going to be hearing something again. But if you're watching on YouTube, this is the first time. We are recording the radio show live on Facebook Live, but we're also recording for the air. This show is going to air on Valentine's Day. So if you hear us talking about Valentine's Day, it's because it is Valentine's Day in our brain and for the show. And so let me know when you're ready to start the record for the station, Andre, by giving me another go ahead. Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, welcome to the show. And I'm so grateful that you are here. Please know that this show was created just for you. So if you're thinking about stumbling and going to the next show, think again. There's a reason why you stumbled upon the show. Just know I've been waiting for you. And so that you know this is a safe place that you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal. And it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends at Lillian's Radio Show on Facebook.com/Lillian's Radio Show, and my viewing friends, that will allow yourself to embrace a new truth so that you can live the life of your dreams. And so today I'm excited because once in a while, I ask my husband to come out from wherever he is so that he can share his wisdom and knowledge. And one of the wisest men I know, my husband. And so he does a lot of behind the scenes on the Lillian McDermott radio show. But today he gets to be part of the conversation. He is my co-host today. And today we're talking about how to have a loving relationship, the keys to a loving relationship. And so with that in mind, there are so many times where we are allowed the freedom to say, I love you. There are other times we feel uncomfortable about using the word love. But Valentine's Day gives us the freedom to say, I love you, or give a card to somebody. But honestly, it is my commitment that Valentine's Day be every day of our life. And so who else that I would ask to come on the show than my Valentine, my husband, Robert. And I asked Robert if he would please come on the show, because sometimes, we'll be married 25 years. And so sometimes it's a little harder to love your spouse or to love the person you're with. So instead of waiting to that one day a year where you're allowed to say, I love you and buy flowers, how can we create a more loving relationship? And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that my husband, my Valentine, is here to do just that. Welcome, Robert, to the Lillian McDermott radio show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been somewhat intimidating because this is my very first time on using a video. I've done your radio show many times, so I'm just kind of talking into a microphone. But so I'm a little intimidated, but we'll get through it. I'm sure it'll be great.
I'm sure we will, and it is exciting to get you to be on the show and for everybody to see who you are. Many people are like, who is this guy that she talks about all the time? And here he is. So I want you to share. I would love to learn, because we have not talked about the show at all. So Robert's going to get like the questions the first time like you are. And so I want to know, who has been your biggest example of being a wonderful husband, father, or friend?
Well, I think when anyone thinks about that, the first person that comes to my mind is my parents. My parents were married for 64 years before my father passed, and I remember them being the longest married couple when we had our daughter's wedding. And I'm proud of them and their relationship and many words of wisdom that my dad gave me to help me be a better spouse, a better loving husband to you. And so, that probably is the strongest one, but that was just the beginning, because our parents are teachers. And so we learn sometimes what to do and sometimes what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned from, many others, including from you.
Aw, thank you. Thank you. That's very sweet. And so with that in mind, yes, we learn what to do and what not to do. So there are patterns that we bring into a relationship that contribute to a loving relationship. And there are patterns that we bring into the relationship that destroy the relationship. And I was saying earlier that the person that married you is not the same person I am today, and vice versa.
Well, it's true. I think if I was here 25 years ago, people would see a different person, because I used to have hair back then. So, we talk about growth and the importance of growth. My hair did some anti-growth, but we've grown a lot. And I think that's probably the most important element of our successful marriage. We have both been open to and continuously trying to learn, trying to grow. I saw a quote this morning from Aristotle that said, when he was 87 years old, he said, "I'm still learning." Mm-hmm. And so that openness to learning and growth is just essential to any successful relationship.
Yeah, I like that, because we're still growing. We're still growing, and it's one of those things where, do you remember when our children brought out our wedding video, and I went to you and I said, "Gosh, I don't recognize us anymore." Those are, although we got married and we had the full intention of having a happy marriage, because that wasn't our intention, is just to be married. We wanted to be happily married, and we've stuck with that, and that's been our intention. And so today, that's what I want to talk about. Is that okay with you, hon?
Oh, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, how to be loving when you don't want to be loving, how to stay in the relationship when you don't want to be in the committed relationship. How do you do all those things? And again, this is totally unrehearsed. So I really don't know what Robert's going to respond, and he doesn't even know what questions I'm going to ask. And this is basically what I do with my show. I'm not going to give him the heads up. So today, that's what we're going to be doing. And so for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live or hearing on the radio, or you're watching us on YouTube, you're always welcome to make comments or questions. You can call 407-373-5959, or you can go to @Lillian's radio show while we're doing the show live and make your comments if you have any question. And that's @Lillian's radio show. And of course, on YouTube. And the way you can find this, if this is too complicated, go to whenyouneedafriend.com, and all those buttons are right there waiting for you. And we're going to continue our conversation with Robert. When we return, we're talking about keys to a loving relationship. So whether you're married or just getting started, let's take our things that we did, the steps that we took, that to improve our marriage, and maybe you can even make it better. And we're going to continue our conversation worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. And thank you for reminding me, Andre, that we don't have music today. So, if you love the theme song, then just hear it in your head. If you don't like the theme song, then this is your lucky day, because we don't have it. We're recording live. This show is going to air on Valentine's Day. And I asked my husband to be my partner in love here instead of partner in crime, and he's co-hosting the show with me. And so Andre is keeping us honest, and you just let us know, Andre, when you're ready to go back to recording the show, okay? And I can't hear you if you're responding. So Andre is my board operator, and he makes sure that the show runs smoothly and without a hitch. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook, if you want to share where you're listening from, that would be great. And if you want to share maybe an experience, maybe a comment, you can private message me as well if there's a private issue you would like for us to talk about. Robert and I have been leaders, or what do you call that, honey, when you're a presenter for Worldwide Marriage Encounter?
Yeah, we were on the Marriage Encounter team, and we were presenters for the weekend.
And we've done a lot of things to grow our marriage. And we may not have the most perfect marriage, but it's perfect for me. What about you, hun?
Well, it is perfect. It's perfect in the sense that it's alive, it's growing, it's healthy, it's loving, it's intimate, and perfection doesn't have to be no conflict or no issues. I mean, that's not real. It's not human. So it's perfect in a human way.
Okay, so are you ready to share your keys to a loving relationship?
I think you just have to wait till we go live to find
I'm
out.
sure. Okay, for those of you who don't know Robert yet, he probably has 10 pages of notes of what he's going to talk about today. And we're ready to go back. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today, my teacher is my partner, Robert McDermott, who we made a decision not to just be married. We wanted to be happily married. And it's been a long 25 years of learning lessons, of making the wrong turn, kind of finding our way back to each other. And for those of you who are in a relationship and maybe not so happy in your relationship right now, maybe we'll offer some tips to improve, to try something different and new. Because there are times that our ego keeps us from wanting to reach out to the other person. But if you know that you're both connected and you've made a decision to be committed to the commitment, then perhaps maybe that can be the starting ground. That's the playing ground to making sure that the next day happens. And so, Robert, when I talked about at the beginning of the show that, the woman who married you is not the same woman who's interviewing you today. Do you miss the old me?
You mentioned watching the video from
Yeah.
our marriage, from our wedding ceremony almost 25
With
years
our
ago.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, and I was welcoming all the guests at the reception, and you were standing behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, your comment after you watched that was, I don't recognize that woman because I've changed so much. And it was good. It was good for me to hear that, really, because what I did was it caused me to think, okay, what about that video and the way you were behaving? Did you end up saying that I don't recognize that person, which meant, I'm not the same person? And of course, the issue was that I was the speaker and I was welcoming everyone, and you were behind me as opposed to next to me and co-host like we are today.
Yeah.
And because that represented 25 years ago that you didn't have a voice, that I was the voice of the family. And so, I got what you were saying, and that certainly has been a major change and shift, gradually over the course of the 25 years.
Yes. And so with that in mind, being able to have your voice and speaking your truth is so important. And, we've had doctors, and I know Robert is my number one fan. He listens to most of my shows. And you've heard doctors say that 95, I say 95, but they say 99%. I just won't go there yet because that could really turn people off. But 95% of all illness is due to an emotional trauma or perception or being wronged, lack of forgiveness. Those all things manifest in the body to create disease. And, certainly I developed a thyroid condition, which most doctors would say that I didn't have a voice, the doctors that have been on my show. And, I'm thinking my thyroid condition should improve because now I have a microphone. What do you say to that?
Well, I get the point that you're trying to make, that our life experiences sometimes can be traumatic and have a significant impact on us emotionally. And that significant impact can be stored in our body and ultimately create some physical issues. And you have worked hard over, especially in the past 7.5, almost 8 years, as you've done the radio show, to express yourself and to have a voice and to be sure that you are heard. Although I will say that even from the first day I met you, you had a voice, And I remember telling one of our relatives that the story about us watching the video, and his response to me was, what? I can't ever remember a time when she didn't have a voice and didn't speak what she thought was important to her. So that, and he's known you longer than I've known you. But you have changed and grown and asserted yourself and learned a lot in the process.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Perception. I was just on another radio show, and I was talking about how, sometimes we don't want to sit with our shadow side. We want to present the beautiful, glorious, the best light of me. But when I'm sitting in the darkness, what do I feel? What do I think of myself? When nobody's watching, what do I think and what do I feel of myself? And that's what people did not hear, is the conversation I was having in my head. Do you understand? I mean, does that make sense to you, Robert? Have you ever been, up there speaking and inside you're going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing, has that ever happened to you? Or do you always present who you are?
That's two different questions. One is that voice in my head that's, oh my gosh, and we're going to be able to do this. That all happens before. Once I'm up there and I started, and my career, I've given thousands and thousands of talks to thousands and thousands of people because I have my consulting career and training career and now college professor. So I give lots of talks to lots of audiences, and that voice, at least now, certainly not in the past 20 years, that's not there. It's there. Maybe when I go to the bathroom before and I'm washing my face or my hands or getting ready. But once I'm at the podium or I'm talking to a group, I'm in the moment and I don't have those kind of voices. Now, the perceptions of ourselves, that certainly comes into play. And that is something that we've got to almost police the voice in our head, and what is the tape, and what is the message that we hear going on in our head that may be in some ways putting ourselves down, in some ways making ourselves not enough, in some ways making ourselves less than we are. And we've got to guard against that and have the most positive, I don't know, I want to use the word soft, but maybe that's not right, but the most loving response to ourselves. So.
Yeah. Okay. So as you were speaking, I was thinking about, the people that we were back then and maybe the conversations in our head. But let's talk about the different stages in marriage, stages in a relationship as well. I mean, when we first met, we wanted to know everything about each other, and we could talk for hours and hours and hours. And a lot of people think that because that has stopped in the relationship, that somehow the relationship isn't fresh or new, or maybe there's someone else that might be better for them. What would you like to say about people that might, if they're going through that right now, that they're not as in love as they were when they first met?
Well, you make a good point about how so many relationships tend to, I don't know, they reduce, they have less and less over time. And that excitement, that energy that bring into the party tends to diminish. And, that hasn't ever happened to us because we made a commitment that it wouldn't happen to us. Our intention was, from the very beginning, was to keep our marriage fresh. And a way we characterize it, a way we state it is, we're going to keep dating each other throughout our marriage.
Yes.
It's not just going to be the beginning of our marriage. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make. They get into routines, whether it be because of jobs, or whether it be because of children, or whether it be because of just time. There is a pattern that people tend to fall into. They maybe subconsciously, maybe consciously, they fall into it. And that's a difference that we're going to recommend, that we have worked with. Consciously not fall in that pattern, consciously stay in a dating mode. And we still talk for hours and hours, and we still have fun with each other and love being around each other. And I don't think that's ever changed in our 25 years.
I don't know. I disagree. There were times in our marriage, and I lovingly disagree with you, because I'm now trying to remember a time. We are not the same people. We were not consciously although we had a commitment to be happily married, there was a time that I would have walked away from our marriage. So I wouldn't say that we were going to bed happy every night and we were not solving our issues in a loving, respectful way. So we learned from those experiences what not to do, so that as we got through some of those harder times, it gave us more abilities to understand, okay, this is something we need to do now. And we went through Marriage Encounter, we went through different couples courses, but I think the most valuable for me, and I don't know if for you, was to work on ourselves individually. Like, I was no longer relying on you for my happiness, and hopefully you're no longer relying on me for my happiness, because we're both happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that one of the essential ingredients of every relationship, every marriage certainly, is the ability to disagree, have conflict, and work through it.
Yeah.
And so in this case, I agree with what you just said, and I don't, the point I'm making is that 25 years later, we still have long conversations, and there's no,
I agree,
no marriage that has every day perfect. And so, yeah, we've had our rough times, and our rough times were incredible growth opportunities that got us to really look at ourselves. And that kind of leads into what you were talking about, the ability, there's got to be a balance between working on the relationship and some of the important ingredients or keys to helping that relationship work, balanced with working on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when we talked earlier about the value of growth and how that may be the single most important ingredient that we're willing to grow, mm-hmm. growing ourselves and willing to look at ourselves and evolve and change and not fall into those habits and not fall into those bad patterns. Because if we put ourselves in our microscope, we have to take responsibility. If our relationship has gone into that neutral, not a lot of feelings, not a lot of excitement, not a lot of energy, well, what is our part of that? What did we do? What are we doing? And so, and I know that's more the relationship side than inside ourselves, but we do have to balance both, looking within ourselves and growing as an individual, as a whole person, and what are the skills and behaviors and patterns and the way we treat each other in terms of our relationships.
So can you guys hear now, my listening and viewing friends, can you hear why I love him so much? It's one of those things that, you can find somebody else that makes you feel that excitement, or you can remain with who you have, with what you have, especially if you're equally yoked when it comes to your religion, or that you're not trying to change their core value. If your core value is the same, I really truly believe you can continue to work and fall in love with that individual all over again with every choice that you make. And so one of the things I wanted to point out, Robert, is that many people, like when they fall in love, it's just like, we talked about those endless hours and endless hours of talking and communication. But that's not sustainable. It's no different than when you start a diet and you're all excited because all you're going to eat is watermelon all day. I'm going to eat watermelon all day. I'm all excited about the watermelon all day. Come the evening, you're going to cry all night because it's not sustainable. And so that is what I'm trying to talk about, is what is sustainable in a relationship? How can you take what you have and continue to grow? Does that make sense, honey?
Yeah. When we first met, we were on the phone all night. We were together as much as we can. And of course, that's not sustainable because we have regular lives. I had 3 children and I had a job. But what we still worked hard to date each other. That meant take times at least once a week or once every other week to go out and just be with each other. We had to find a place and a balance to make sure we were dating each other.
Yeah, and I remember when things were financially tight, or if maybe we just didn't go out, I remember putting the kids, they'd have pizza and a movie, and we'd close the door and we'd have a romantic meal inside. I would prepare the meal. So money is no issue. There's different ways that we can love one another without spending a ton of money and keeping it very, very simple and putting your relationship first, and together you can be parents together. And so we're going to continue this conversation off on the air and off the air at whenyouneedafriend.com, and off the air it's at facebook.com/Lillian's radio show. And we're going to continue our conversation when we return. We'll be right here waiting for you. Good job, hon.
Hey, thanks.
Did you just let that all the jitters of being on camera go away now?
No, I still feel a little bit of jitters inside because this is odd because I actually have like Facebook. I'm looking at my phone and seeing how many people are watching.
Yeah. Don't be looking at that.
But you're saying that, but you kind of pay attention if somebody's asking questions and things.
Oh, well, let's see if anybody has a question. We heard from Ashley, who's listening from Apopka. She says she loves us both, and we love you back, Ashley.
Yes, Ashley, I love you.
Yes. And so Ashley is the person who makes this show run smoothly most of the time, right, Ashley? So she makes sure that she reaches out to the guest, and every time she has a wonderful, wonderful guest for us lined up, she makes sure that everything is running smoothly. And so we're very, this is a time where we get to say, I love you, and have that freedom to say, I love you. Well, I believe that love is 24/7, 365 days a year, even if you don't feel like it. And that's when you don't feel like it, Robert, I want to talk about when you don't feel like it and what we do to get out of it. Okay. Well, maybe not now, but.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So you had asked if there's anybody who has a question that's watching on Facebook Live, because we can't see you unless you make a comment. So you can either tell us where you're from and then we know where you're watching, or you can just ask a question or send some love. You can actually do like a little thumbs up, or you can send hearts. And since this is going to be recorded on or aired on Valentine's Day, then Andre, let us know when we're ready to get back on the air. So as you know, honey, when we go back on the air, I'll talk about my show and then I'll reintroduce you. Okay.
Sure.
So Andre, let us know when you're ready to go back on the air. So if you guys have any questions for Facebook Live watchers, if you are struggling now with your relationship, you can send a private message as well. You can message me. I think that's what it's called.
Private message.
Yeah. And Robert has a background in, you tell everybody about your background, honey, like as a spiritual director too.
Well, my background is that I have a human resources degree. So I was focused on the people side of business. And I thought it was a great marriage for me because I loved working with people and helping people flourish. And I love the business world. So human resources was a wonderful place for me to get started in that. As time has gone on, I have worked on, other career options like running businesses and so forth. But I did go through a 3-year program in spiritual direction, which was kind of, a little bit too strong of a title. It was really about spiritual listening. It was a listening ministry. It was helping people to get in touch with themselves, to get in touch with their relationship with God, to get in touch with their relationship with others, and help them to work through whatever issues or problems they have, along with getting some support from God and from others. So I did spend 3 years going through that program, and then here lately I've been a college professor I teach human resources management and some other programs like that.
Yes, and I must say that you get the high marks by everybody. And for those of you who need marriage counseling, as you know, I'm a certified life coach, but together as a couple, we could work together to support you as well if you need coaching as well. So it looks like we're about 20 seconds in and the radio show is going to begin. And Andre, keep me honest. Let me know when to go. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you could hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I'm your host, Lillian McDermott, and it is my goal that we learn from each other, go through life with childlike wonder, be curious, not critical. And I think that in relationship, that curiosity about each other kind of dwindles and we become critical of one another. And it triggers us. it's maybe, and I've said this to my husband before, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And what is that it? How can we dive into that it and figure out what it is? Well, many couples do not. And I believe that many couples stop too soon before the relationship thrives. And so I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Let's be part of this movement of taking 100% responsibility for living the life that you want. And so while you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, subscribe. And when you subscribe, you get the 90-day challenge to self-love ebook, and you will also get a lot of other free gifts. And the audio of the show will go to you. Now, if you want the video of the show, you can also subscribe at YouTube. So there's a button you can click that will take you right to YouTube. And there's also social media. There's Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are on Facebook Live right now. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, let us know where you're from, or if you have any questions, you can write your questions in the comments section. And so this is where we take ownership and we say, okay, this is what I want. I want to have a loving relationship. It may not be what it is right now, but if you focus on what you don't have, you'll get more of what you don't have. That's why we're calling this show The Keys to a Loving Relationship, because you are the key holder, so you can unlock the key. I want to encourage you to go to if you're not a social media kind of person, or if you're not a YouTube kind of person, you can follow us on podcasts, and every single podcast you can follow us there. And also you can call 407-373-5959. No excuses. We can stay connected 24/7. So today I am grateful that we are talking about love and loving relationship. But the celebration of love should not just be on Valentine's Day. It could be every single day, every single minute of the day. And so I'm excited that I get to introduce you to my husband, Robert. Although he's been on other shows, this is his first time on Facebook Live. Is this kind of like a nail biter for you, hon?
Yeah, well, it's just a little intimidating because you have this camera on me all the time, and when I was just on the radio without the video, I was just thinking about what I want to say and communicating through the audio. So it just adds a different feel to it.
Yeah, the glazed look over your eyes doesn't work when you're on camera, right? Okay, so while we're off the air, we talked about it. When you're not feeling it. I am not in love. I love the person, but I'm not in love with the person. I hear this in coaching all the time. And, I just want out because this other person has everything I want. And so let's talk about what is it and how can we choose love when we don't feel loving, or how do we choose love and keeping the relationship fresh when we ourselves aren't loving ourselves? What would you like to add to that?
It's a common scenario. It's something that happens to all of us at times, and sometimes often. The first thing that comes to my mind is that I take inventory. I stop and I think I'm different from you in the way in which I deal with conflict.
Yes.
I like to retreat and process and then come back, whereas you like to persist and kind of get to the end of it. So we've had to learn to.
I want it done with. I want it done with. Yeah.
But we have to learn to respect each other's styles in order for this to work. So when I retreat and I stop and think, am I falling into the trap of allowing this moment and these emotions to be 100% of everything, as opposed to realizing that these emotions in this specific incident is one small fraction of the overall relationship. So I have to keep it in perspective and understand, not just keep it in perspective, but bring back into my mind the rest of the inventory, the good things about the relationship and why I value it. And the second thing that I want to say is when we did go through some personal growth experiences, we learned how to shift. And that concept of shifting simply means that anytime, if we're in a certain type of emotion, we can tell ourselves it's time to shift, which
Mm-hmm.
means that I'm going to stop on the dime and I'm going to replace that emotion with a different emotion. So I'm going to do away with a negative tension, bad feelings, and say, you know what? I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this positive. I'm going to bring it back to a positive relationship. And by doing that shift, by telling ourselves to shift that emotion and work at a different angle, I can come back at it and not be bound, not be limited by the emotion that I was feeling. And so those are two things I would say in response to your question.
Well, I do want to talk about that. If people ask me at any time in our marriage, what percent is good? And I think that's a great question to ask ourselves, not only in a relationship as a marriage, but if you have a partner, a long-term partner, or someone that you've just started dating, what percentage of this would you say effortless? And I would say for Robert and I, it's between, 90 and 95% wonderful. Our relationship was wonderful. But when we were arguing and didn't see eye to eye, that 5 to 10% was everything. And I think that's what you're talking about, that perspective. And both of us, we fought like we had to win. And what happened was when we fight to win, someone's going to lose, whether it's the children or it's going to be the spouse or the other person in the relationship. And eventually, if you're the victor every time, that person is going to want to retreat and say, this isn't worth the fight. Even if the relationship is 90%, you still need to work on that percentage that's not so good. And that, I think, Robert, you and I have been really good at focusing on that. And that was a huge shift in our relationship, was to, understand that while we're in that 10%, there's still 90% good, right?
Yeah. What comes into my mind when you're saying all that is the concept of ego.
Mm-hmm.
I had a student just this morning who wrote me a message, and he was talking about how egos get in the way of good relationships between employees and the managers, because
Sure.
it's a business program.
Sure.
But I was so impressed that he understood that our egos, our desire to win, our desire to be right, our desire to control, our desire to look good, those get in the way of a strong quality relationship based not on our ego, but based on our essence.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the shift that I was talking about is to realize that our ego is caught up. And so it's really not about balancing the number of wins so that you win as much as I win. It's
Mm-hmm.
really about shifting away from winning and shifting toward being in our essence, being at our best toward each other and coming up with what's best for our relationship.
Yeah. And what's the saying that I say when we're in an argument, and it's definitely our egos? Do you know what I'm going to say?
Go for it.
The answer to is no. It's my ego hates your ego, but my essence loves your essence. And so when we can choose to be in our essence, then everything just runs a little different than if we're in our egos. And then the second thing I want to talk about is when you would retreat. And I would I'm a resolver. I don't like holding grudges. I don't like having issues in my life that I can't resolve right then and there, because it's time to move on. Life is too short. And that's my personality. And Robert could retreat for days and weeks. And so one of our, back then,
Weeks.
Well, week. So let's talk about what we learned and how to solve that problem. Do you want to share? Or do you
Sure,
want
I'll be happy to.
Okay.
And, I'm not a big fan of the word hate. So, I'd rather you say something like, you don't like my ego.
I dislike it very strongly.
But anyway, so ask me the question again so I get back started.
How did you learn what to do when you would retreat so that you could respect and honor my desire to
and I think we learned this because we went through it was either the engaged couples or maybe when we went through marriage encounter ourselves as a couple.
I think it was Father Brendan Gillen.
Okay, good. I knew somewhere along there, it wasn't something you and I made up. I mean, we got advised to do this. And the idea is it's okay to retreat, that it's, you have to respect I remember Tina on your show just last week said that people have different styles, and we've got to learn how to get along with those different styles. So what we were advised to do is that if we're in the middle of the argument and I'm feeling the need to process, to think about it, that the idea is to say, can we stop talking about this right now, kind of like take a time out and come back together this afternoon, tonight, based on what's in your mind about when's the next available time you could talk. So not stretched out to a week or a month, but maybe it's this evening or tomorrow sometime. Can we think about getting back together? And we both agree to that, and we move on.
And we agree to a date, a time and a space that we can do that. And that gave me the freedom of not brewing and stewing and knowing that things would be resolved. And so things would be at a truce. And so, this was a very, very important tool and tip for us. And so, and Andre, I don't know if you're giving me okay, till break. Okay, thank you, Andre. So he's now reading my mind. Andre is our producer, and I was reading the cues incorrectly. And so today we're talking about establishing a loving relationship. How do you do it? And this is what we do. I'm not saying this is perfect, but it's perfect for us. And we're continuing to grow. Even if it's perfect for us, it's still not enough. We keep growing. And we're going to continue our conversation worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com, live at Lillian's radio show on Facebook.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Okay. Sorry, Andre. I did not quite. You must have looked at my face going, what? When are we going off the air? Okay. So for those of you, does this make any sense to you? Can you relate to it? Feel free to make a comment or share your thoughts. And so, it is confusing. So Andre's just letting me know, since we don't have the music and usually we're dancing by now, but because we don't have the music, it's really difficult.
Should have let me know. I could have done the music part. I could have added the music to this.
Oh yeah? Or maybe next time, gadgets. Maybe next time. Okay. So, now we're going to talk about, remember the article I wrote? I mean, is there anything that you want to share while we're off the air of maybe some comments of what we've made so far, that you would like to release?
I don't have anything I want to add to points or keys that we've already discussed. I mean, certainly there are more keys that we could talk about, but time is going to run out before we could talk about everything. So no.
But is there anything that you want to talk about that's dear, that you wrote down? I mean, how many pages of notes do you have? I'd like to check.
At this stage, after 25 years, I don't need pages and pages. I just needed a few bullets. But yeah, I certainly have, one or two points that you could say. Do you have anything else you want to say? And I could talk for a minute or two about a couple of things.
Yes. Okay. So, but anyway, the retreating, that was very important. And so there are times in our relationship, and I do want to bring this up again when we're back on the air, but there are times in a relationship that you just got to call a truce. And I do want to talk about that, Robert. There have been many times where we've had to call a truce, and it's amazing once you get the emotion out and you start really shifting your perspective, how easily you can resolve things in a relationship. So, and Andre, keep us honest, okay, with the time. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, great. So, Robert, what has been, I'm just going to ask you this question, what has been the eye-opener to being married almost 25 years? And whether it's to me or to anybody. Well, it's to me.
Does eye-opener mean the single most important?
Your growth. Yeah, that's caused more growth in you.
I have to say, I think the most important one thing is I made a commitment to you and you made a commitment to me. And I really earnestly made that commitment. I'm going to do what I need to do. Okay.
And we're about to go live on the air. 2 seconds. Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today, my teacher and my partner in love and joy, and we've gone through probably just about every emotion that you can possibly think of, and after all these years, we're still strong. I think we're stronger now than we were when we first got married, because when you first get married, you have kind of these illusions of, oh, we're going to be able to keep this up for the rest of our lives. But there comes a time where there's a disillusionment. Who or what did I marry? Or who am I with? And why am I still with this person? And so these keys to a loving relationship might be different for you. But we're sharing what has worked for us. And there have been times in our relationship, especially in that disillusionment period, where we had to call a truce, because there's still some things that creep up into our relationship still today that are not acceptable, whether it's me or my husband, not acceptable. And so we need to continue to work and grow on those things. But there have been times that we've had to call a truce. And so share a little bit about calling a truce, Robert, and if you'd like to share or not, I don't know. I'm just calling you off guard.
I could talk about that, but I really think that, this is something that's kind of an important thing to you. I think it'd be better for you to talk about that.
Good one. Good one to put the ball back.
I can sense that this is something that you would attribute to a successful relationship, and that you're probably in a better position to talk about the importance of
that. I just think that when it comes to calling a truce, there has to be a time where you can continue to build on the relationship, because when you're looking at what's wrong in the relationship, you'll keep adding and everything. It's just like when you have a cut on your finger, you're all of a sudden finding yourself squeezing lemons, and it's going to sting. It's going to sting, and you're going to notice all the stinging points. And so calling a truce has to do with taking a break from whatever argument it is and start building something good, adding something positive. And we had that for every argument we had, Robert. We did 5 wonderful things for each other.
Yeah, although it wasn't just arguments, it was like negative words. If you're going to say something critical, there needs to be 5 positive things. So it was more than just arguments, but yes.
Yeah. So
I'm a big fan. I 100% with you on the value of taking the time out, on allowing the emotions, the pent up emotions that get built up further when you keep at it, to let that go and start thinking again and not be totally driven by your emotions, especially negative emotions. It's critical.
Yeah. And another one that was important for me, and I even wrote an article on this, and it was about having to stop changing our partner. You fall in love with your partner because of their traits, and then you get together, and the longer you're together, the more you want them to become like you. And that was a strong issue in our marriage, that once we started working on ourselves and stopped trying to change the other person, then you start taking responsibility for yourself as opposed to trying to change the other person. I see you nodding your head, Robert.
Yeah, it's about awareness. It's about being aware that, I'll call it, my motivating force is to change you to be like me, as opposed to, when I wasn't aware of that, I was still behaving that way. I was still trying to influence you or control you or push you in certain ways. But I had to become aware that it wasn't a good thing for me to be working to change it to be more like me, because I'm not the right answer. I need to allow you to be whole, and I need to be whole, and we need to find a way to work our relationship out together as 2 whole people.
Very good. Yes. And so then I'm giving you my keys, and then you'll share with yours. And then the other one that I wrote on is, remember to keep a private journal. There were times where I did not want to be in love with this man. There were times that I did not want to forgive this man or this woman or this person. Whatever it is that you're going through in your relationship, there are times that you don't. And so that's when it's critical to keep a private journal of what you love about the person, why you married this person, why you're with the person. Keep that in mind. And so would you like to add to anything to remember and reminisce about the beauty in the relationship?
I think it's a good tip. I'm not a journaler the way that you are, but having taking the time to write down, and I write it down by sending you love letters. You know, when I do a love letter, it's a process of getting in touch with what I value about you and being able to communicate it to you. And so I have all the love letters that I've sent to you which articulate what I really value and why I think I'm in love with you. And so that's kind of a form of journaling in a way. But I agree that it's good to write it down and have it to go back to and reflect on.
Yes. And then the fourth one is forgive. It's, you know, that's an F word for a lot of people, but that F word for forgiveness is crucial. But it's not forgive and forget, because, you know, if you forget, you're bound to repeat it again. It's forgive and grow. Figure out ways to not repeat it again. Figure out ways that would have been better for the relationship. And is there anything you'd like to add to that, Robert?
Well, goodness gracious, we all behave in ways that need forgiveness, and we all have partners that behave in ways that need forgiveness. And so when there's not forgiveness, it's like a little bit of a wall being built that divides us. Mm-hmm. And it also is something that's going on, brewing inside of us that we're not dealing with. And so many people say that forgiveness is really about us. It's not about the other person. So taking the time and being willing to forgive. I mean, unconditional love brings with it kind of an expectation that we are human beings and we need forgiveness.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And then last but not least, for me,
you're going through your whole list before I get to coast.
No, now you get to do yours.
How many pages of notes have you got?
20,000. Okay, so then the last thing is try something different. Don't be afraid to try something different and new. Maybe go to classes, coaching, marriage encounter, retrovite. Those are all wonderful things that you can try. Now, your keys, honey. Anything I left out?
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly, you know, we've been talking about the keys all the way along. So really the question is, are there any others that come to my mind that we haven't talked about? Mm-hmm. One that comes to my mind that I hear a lot of people talk about in their relationships is the concept of jealousy. And this is an important one because I always worry when I hear a couple talk about jealousy and I can't do anything because she's jealous or he's jealous, and they won't let me go here. They won't let me talk about this. And so, you know, this has never been an issue between you and I. We trust each other. We're not jealous. We are open. And if somebody is experiencing jealousy, then they need, or even the jealousy from another party, they need to take action to change that into trust. Mm-hmm. And that comes right into the very things you were just talking about. It comes to marriage encounter, it does some personal growth, get in touch with what is the issue that's become aware, what is creating that jealousy, and you got to deal with it and get it behind you and replace it with trust. So this is an essential ingredient for a successful relationship.
Anything else, honey, would you like to add?
Well, I know time is starting to run a little bit low.
Well, we have Facebook Live, so we can continue a little bit longer after the show.
Yeah. I guess one other thing that I've talked about other times that have been on your show, and that's the concept of overlapping circles. You know, sometimes people think if each circle represents each one of us, that the idea is to have those circles be completely overlapping. That's supposed to be the ideal marriage. And that's not the ideal marriage. And also being completely divided and separate is not the ideal marriage. So finding a way to be overlapped and have some us and some of me and you. And so having the right level of that overlap is important so you don't smother each other and so you don't live as married singles. So I think that's an important concept as well.
Any other?
Well, you know, we haven't talked about it as much, but we learned in Marriage Encounter the importance of communicating your feelings. And this is particularly hard for men because there is a gender bias when it comes to feeling. You know, 75% of men tend to be thinkers and 75% of women tend to be feelers when you look at things like Myers-Briggs. And so I'm a thinker, you're a feeler. And what we've learned is you got to get in touch with your feelings and be willing to communicate them, share them, and work through them.
And let me tell you, gentlemen, Men out there, there's nothing sexier than a man who shares his feelings. I
Oh,
will tell you that.
I thought it was a man who works in the kitchen and cooks food.
Oh, yes. There's nothing sexier than a man in the kitchen who shares his feelings. I'm so thank you so much. And that's why our marriage is so good, because you complete me. So thank you, Robert. I really appreciate the fact that you don't complete me, that I choose to be with you. And we make it as fun as we possibly can. So thank you so much. And thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having the show on this special day.
Yes. And for you, now it's your turn. What makes your relationship loving? Share it with us. You can call or text or whatever it is that you like, but let's keep this communication going. The best way to love your kids is to love their parent. And please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Yay!
That's the best ever.
That's the best ever. That's true. But you know what? When I say it that time, it is. At this moment, it is the best ever.
That's good.
I'm hoping that we said something today that's resonating. So you said that there were other things that you would like to chat, and because we have some extra time, if you would like to share.
Well, I have a lot of extra time, but I can spend a few minutes. But
yes, exactly.
I got to get back to my college responsibilities.
I know, but what is it? Is there anything that you left out that I did not ask you?
Yeah, I guess maybe there's one thing that I would just one.
Okay, one thing.
And the concept is called planned renegotiation. Planned renegotiation. So it's based on an article I read 30 or 40 years ago. But the idea is that people have expectations of each other and don't communicate them. And then what happens is when those expectations are not met, we get angry, we get frustrated. Mm-hmm. And if we continue to not deal with the unspoken expectations, hostility grows.
Yes.
And so planned renegotiation simply means communicate and agree on the expectations. And that this goes from both partners. In other words, you could be on one end having an expectation and getting frustrated because it's not being met. And you can be on the receiving end where the partner somehow has an expectation of you, but you haven't physically heard, verbally heard that and agreed to it. Yes. So it's so important to talk about those expectations and have an agreement and then go forward. And then you're not frustrated because something's not being met. But this happens a lot in marriages. People have expectations. Let's use a simple example. I want the house clean and you don't, or vice versa. And so I get frustrated because I walk around and something's not clean. But the reality is, if we don't ever talk about it and agree on what we're going to do and whose responsibility is, then all it does is lead to frustration and hostility and a wall between you. So take the time to plan it out and negotiate your expectations. You'll save a lot of hassles and frustration.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I want to add to what you said. There are times expectations or there cannot be an agreement made. And I've shared this before on the show that there are times, and we've done that before more than we do now, is that if you're not willing to agree to this, what are you willing to agree to? There's always something people are willing to do. And so what will you be willing to do? And so Robert and I don't know if we came up with this or if we learned this or what, but whenever, and it hasn't happened in a long time, but at the beginning when we were learning how to compromise and how to agree with one another, that we came up with the 5 rule. So the 5 rule is, if you can't agree to what I want and I can't agree to what you want, then you and I would retreat from one another, part from one another, write down 5 things that you would agree to, then come back to the individual and share, and hopefully there'll be one thing in common. Go back if you can't find the one thing in common that you're willing to do. So marriage is about compromise. Marriage is about learning from one another. And so I want to thank you, honey, for growing with me and not staying stuck so that I'm dragging you everywhere I want to go.
Just let me add one quick point about what you just said.
Okay.
It's a good idea, great idea, to list down the 5 options. Another additional feature you can do is say, what's important to you? What's important to you? And let me tell you what's important to me. And if you can identify what's important to you and me, then you could probably create option 6, 7, and 8, which addresses what's important, and both parties can be satisfied. So
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of an addition to what you're saying.
I love that. And one thing is knowing that we are both in it to win it. That when you win, I win, our children win, our grandchildren win, and the people around us win. And so being in it to win it just means that we have the same goal. And one of the things that I wanted to share today, and I guess I've never shared it, is our mission statement. And writing a mission statement for your marriage. And I guess because of time, I'm not going to share it again. Maybe next time you'll come on, I'll share the mission statement at the beginning. But, our goal is to run our marriage, not like you run a business, but even better, that we hold it more to our heart and know that if there is problems in any aspect of a business, you need to address it, or else the business will go bankrupt or collapse. And so many people spend more time focused on their business than they do on their marriage. And so with that in mind, I want to encourage people to look at their marriage and maybe create a mission statement with your spouse. Maybe that is the gift that you give each other for Valentine's Day this year, is a mission statement. So no excuses. Money should never keep you from joy in a relationship. As a matter of fact, some of our favorite times is when we create an adventure without spending a dime, huh, hon?
Oh, yeah. And that's not hard to do. We have bikes so we can ride places and have a picnic, and we can have a picnic in our own
Plenty
home.
of wine.
Yeah, and we can dance in our own house. We don't have to go.
We have a dance floor. Yep, that's right. So there's so many different things that you can do, but mostly love one another the way that the person wants to be loved. So that negotiation, this is what I need from the relationship, and this is what you need from the relationship, and then start from there. So thank you, Robert, for growing with me and not being comfortable enough to stay where we feel that we've arrived. We keep growing some more.
Yes, you had a show last week about getting out of your comfort zone. So that's what we try to do, and we understand the value of that.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Love you. And for those of you who are watching on Facebook Live, thank you so much. If you like the show, or if you know somebody who could use a little sweetness in their relationship, share it and like it and help us spread the word. Remember, follow and like so that you can know when we're Facebook Live. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube later on, just know that you can do the same. You can make comments, you can like, you can share, but help us grow this empowering information that we are 100% co-creators of our life. So we'll see you next time. Till our next conversation. Bye.